Hey, I got the questions for gear tasting.
For today?
Yeah.
Did you change the font on these or something?
No, same as always.
Can hardly see. Get my readers. Oh, that's better. Still better than M-frames. Hey guys, welcome to Gear Tasting. Today I wanted to start off talking about something that's a little topical for me because I'm in the midst of writing an article about it at the moment, which is basically having a home security assessment that you run yourself. So I'm putting together a checklist of a bunch of different points on what to look for around your home and how to further secure your home to make it a harder target. So what I mean by that is that you want the criminal to look at your home as though it's going to be such a task for them to get into it that they move on to another home. And that's not to pick on your neighbors and say, hey, go, screw with our neighbor's house. It's just to say that you want to make your profile even harder than your neighbor's house. So that being said, what you do to make that happen is that you're looking for ways to increase your security footprint. And what I like to say is that all security is just buying time. So all you're doing is making it more difficult for the criminal to get into your house, and a determined criminal, no matter how much security you have, is eventually going to get into your home, and that's just something you have to accept. What you don't have to accept, though, is negating the fear that comes along with criminal activity. So the idea here is not to ever think that you need to stop being afraid of criminal activity around your home or being afraid of having your home hit by a burglar. That's not the goal here. So the goal is to have a healthy level of fear because that keeps you focused and keeps you dialed into looking for ways to beef up your security. So just to give you a couple examples, just kind of thinking in my head as I'm walking through a house or up to a front door, you want to make sure that your bushes aren't overgrown, that thieves have a place to hide in the front of your home. So you want to make sure those are low so that they can't hide behind a bush and break into a window in the front of your home. More than likely, that's not even going to really be a factor anyway, because they're more than likely going to try to get around to the backyard. If you own your own home, this is where I would suggest putting some padlocks on the gates, preferably something with a combination lock. So if you still have people that need the combination, need access to your backyard on a somewhat regular basis, let's say you have maintenance that needs to get back there on a weekly or monthly basis or something like that, they can at least have the code, which you would then be in charge of, maintaining and changing every once in a while, like a good password manager that you are. You would change that code, from time to time and make sure the people that need to know it. Then you would get into, cameras, things like that. You might want to look at having a small, simple home security system, maybe something with that's controlled or throttled through an IP so that you can view those devices on your phone. I would look at lighting too. So exterior lighting on your home isn't just for making it pretty. It's also to light up your house at night to really prevent burglaries from happening. Thieves are going to target a dark lit house rather than something that's very bright. So, something like a motion activated floodlight is good to have maybe on the sides of your house or around areas that people may walk into. Just the fact of a light turning on at night is a deterrent to a lot of criminals too. So, and then there's the alarm system itself that your home might have. I would highly recommend having a monitored alarm system, but even if you can't have that, having stickers on your window and a sign in your yard is a huge deterrent in itself because, thieves might think you have an alarm system when you might not actually have one. So you can actually pick those signs and stickers up on Amazon. I've seen them there before. So just like a no-name security company, throw a sign in your yard and call it a day. And then you also want to look at your home as though you're trying to attack it too. So put yourself in the burglar's shoes and think, if I was going to break into this house, how would I be able to get into it? Would I have to break a window? Would I have to go through the backyard? Is it locked? Would I have to jump the fence? If so, what's going to happen when I jump the fence? Is a camera going to pick me up as I come over the fence? That type of thing. Even things like signs on your gate that like beware of dog signs can even be a deterrent too. Most thieves aren't even going to want to screw with the backyard that could potentially have a dog that's in the backyard. Things like that. Even a pair of size 12 shoes on the front door might make a criminal think that, oh, there's someone here that might be home or someone I don't want to mess with. So things like that are what I'm putting in the article, and I just wanted to briefly just talk through it with you so you can kind of understand where my head's at today, because I really think it's something that everyone needs to pay attention to. And doing some kind of security assessment, no matter where you are, if you're in an apartment or a home or even in an RV, things like that are really important to take a look at and think about the mental aspect of what might go through a criminal's mind as they're looking at your house for a target of opportunity. All right, guys, so I wanted to go ahead and get into some questions over coffee, because the first question kind of plays into something that I wanted to talk about briefly in terms of, I guess, it's a gear option. But so Jacob asked on Facebook, with all the talk on gear tasting about the PCU, which is the protective combat uniform we went over, I believe, on the last gear tasting, and we wrote up an article on that as well on the site. In cold weather clothing, where does web gear like chest rigs, battle belts, plate carriers, etc. fit? So is it under the outer layer so you don't compress the insulation, over the outer layer for ease of access? I often wear a belt setup for hunting and overwhites when needed when hunting in the winter. So I will first say this, really where you put that kind of gear is up to your SOP. So whatever you decide to do is not going to be wrong. As far as units and the military goes, I'm not aware of what those SOPs are, so I'm not really going to speak to that. But I will address what you kind of mentioned about compressing the insulation. So I think what you're getting at is that if the web gear was over your outer layer, it might be a better place for it rather than on the inside compressing the insulation under the outer layer. Yeah, so you're saying that the outer layer would go over your web gear so that you're worried about it compressing that interior insulation. I would say that's probably that's probably a good line of thinking, just because you would be compressing the insulation, but you wouldn't be compressing the outer layer, preventing that moisture from escaping. Because the whole thing about the PCU system is you're going to walk it dry. So if you have moisture, if you have sweat and perspiration that builds up inside of the PCU system, the goal is for it to get out. So it's built to do that. And if you have web gear and things like that blocking, I guess, the venting that would be in the PCU, you're kind of blocking that that from escaping, so that you might get areas that don't dry. So that would really be the consideration you need to kind of think about, is wherever you have that gear at inside the outer layer, you could be preventing that moisture from being able to dry. So really, I would probably say that you might want to try to avoid wearing things like that if you can help it. So if you have stuff on a belt, maybe transitioning to having those type of things on a regular belt so that you're not putting a big web belt around all that gear. Maybe it's just riding on your regular belt, things like that. So I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth on that question, so I'm not really quite sure how to answer it. But I would just say focus on what the PCU is designed to do, which is to expel moisture from the system. And anywhere you're preventing that is blocking that from doing its job, and it might not dry like the rest of the system would. All right, one thing I wanted to highlight, speaking about the PCU system, is a couple of things from a company called Quickpoint. I've had this existing visual user's guide for quite a while now, many years. They've come out with a newer one with if you remember from our last video about the PCU, I talked about the differences between Block 0 and Block 1, and now the new stuff that's Block 2. So this new Quickpoint guide here goes into the Block 2 stuff. This is the original. Basically, when the Block 0 came out, this is what the user guide that came out. And what's great about these is they're not only kind of waterproof guides to the system itself, but I really love the original guide. You can still actually buy both of these. I'll put up links on Quickpoint where you can get these, but they're about $20 a piece, and I'd highly recommend them. Even if you don't own the PCU system, there's some really great information in here about repairing gear, how to wash gear, things like that, and even, you know, basically that self-drying aspect of the PCU I talked about too. But this is one of the biggest advantages that I see with the Quickpoint guide, is that it's got this cool wheel that allows you to really pick and choose what level of gear you wear based on the environment. So, you know, it shows pictures of a soldier basically in a static position versus an active position, and actually being cold and wet while static, and then cold and wet while moving, and then also in, you know, extreme cold situations. And it tells you layer by layer what to wear based on that. Because again, the PCU system isn't I have level 1 on and then I go all the way up to level 7 and the outer layer is level 7. It's not like that. It's really kind of a mix and match type of apparel system. So it really goes into that. And then the new guide, I don't know if there's actual dates on here. So this is 2013. This is 2007. So big difference in date there. So this goes into all the newer Block 2 stuff, which is pretty cool. I actually just got this when I was writing the article. So Block 2, this has all the stuff on the level 9, things like that we talked about on the article. And again, it's got a bunch of cool information on the back in terms of cold weather exposure, cold weather injuries, repairing instructions, and things like that. So I think these guides are phenomenal and totally worth the $40 to pick these two things up. So if you're into the PCU system, even if you don't have any of it yet and you're looking at getting into it, this is probably a great place to start, just so you have a frame of reference on each piece of gear. Okay, back to questions. Matt V on Facebook asks, I can't remember if you've already discussed spotting scopes or recommending a quality brand beyond matching mil or MOA. I really haven't gotten into spotting scopes much. I think I mentioned the Bushnell Tactical Elite scope that my buddy Jason has. It's a phenomenal scope, but I've actually been doing a little research on what to purchase myself. I haven't actually made a purchase, but I've really been looking at a particular Bushnell scope, and I have the details on my computer, and I'll post the link of what I'm looking at in the video. But it's called a Legend Tactical. It's like a 15 to 45 by 60, and it's got a mil hash reticle. And, you know, I talked about in previous videos the advantage of having a MOA or a mil system, and what that means is that the glass, as you're looking through it in your scope, whatever that is, whether it's MOA or mil, you also want to have your turret adjustment for elevation be the same as what you're looking through. So meaning that I want to dial mils as I'm looking through the scope to determine where I need to go. So if I need to come up, you know, 0.2 mils or something, if I want to dial that, I need to be able to dial that. That's not to say you really need to do that for, you know, subtle changes. You would just adjust within the scope and move the gun. You're not going to want to dial every time you have something like that happen, but that's where I'm going with that. So this is, like I said, it's made by Bushnell, and there's kind of a cool feature on the Bushnell website, and I'm going to link to that too, but you can compare two models of scopes. So that Bushnell Tactical Elite that I'm mentioning is a pretty pricey scope. The Tactical Elite runs somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1,200 to $1,400, I think, like that. But this Legend Tactical, I've actually seen it on Rifles Only website for about $500. So it's a very cost-effective spotting scope, in my opinion. It's a first focal plane, which is really important. And I'm not going to really get into that because that's a lengthy discussion too. I think I've covered that in previous gear tastings. But the difference between them, just to give you an idea, I'm just going to run through real quick. So first I'm going to talk about the specs from the Legend Tactical, which is the $500 one, and then I'm going to go through the specs on the Elite Tactical, which is like the $1,400 one. So magnification on Legend Tactical is like 15 to 45, objective is 60. Another couple of features here, so they're waterproof, the weight is 37 ounces, it is waterproof and fog proof, it's got a eye relief of 30 millimeters, the lens is a multi-coated, and then the glass is a BAK4. I really don't know what that means, I'd have to look that up. But the field of view is 180/60 at 15x. So, and then jumping over to the Elite Tactical side, your magnification is 8x40. So you're getting a wider field of view for the Elite Tactical, you know, 8 versus 15 on the other scope. but your max range is 40, where it was 45 on the cheaper one. Still has the same 60 millimeter objective. The prism glass actually says not applicable on this, so I'm not sure what the difference is between that back BAK4 and not applicable. Then the lens coating is a fully multi-coated lens. It does have the same rain guard and waterproof and fog proof. Same 30 millimeter eye relief, and then the field of view on this one is 50, and then it's got a 16 at 40x. So obviously it's a little bit different in terms of field of view, but it still appears to be the same kind of bomb-proof construction for this Bushnell Elite Tactical as it does for the cheaper Legend Tactical. So if I was going to recommend one, I would recommend this, because that's actually what I'm considering getting eventually when I do buy a spotting scope. And obviously I don't have any time with that one, so take my recommendation as as what it is someone that hasn't used this version. But I have used the Elite Tactical, and that one's an awesome scope. So I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen the other, depending on what you want. So if you can spend the money, spend the money. If you can't, this is a great option as well. The one thing I've been really looking at, though, in regards to the Mammoth Sniper competition that's coming up in January, I've been really looking at weight for items. So I think that this is a better option because it's a more compact package in terms of the scope, and it's still the same weight. So this is 37 ounces, and the Elite Tactical is 37 ounces. Elite Tactical is like this big. This one's like this big. So, take that as you will too. Hope that helps. Okay, last question's from Matt A on Facebook. Bryan, can you dive a bit more into your GTD systems? I started reading David's book after I heard you talking about it and would love to see the OCD in your systems. So, if you're unfamiliar with GTD, this is David Allen's legacy book on getting things done. And I won't really go into the concepts of it, but it is a great management system for all your to-dos in life. So I'll say that. I would highly recommend picking it up. Really, the audiobook is even better in my opinion than reading the book, so I would start there if you're looking at getting into getting things done as a system. So if you really want to know about my OCD, I've got a lot of it, so I can start talking a little bit about it. I use OmniFocus, as I mentioned. I've mentioned before. I guess my OCD really comes into play when I get into managing what I have to do. So that's to say that when I have an idea that pops into my head and I say, oh crap, I need to not forget that, I have an app on my phone for OmniFocus as well, in addition to the desktop version. And it's great for kind of an on-the-fly adding things to my list. So OmniFocus has what's called an inbox, and David Allen talks about the inbox concept within getting things done. And I've actually got a physical inbox, sitting on my desk. I've got a folder that's called In that handles those kind of things on the go. And then I've actually got a folder on my desktop called Inbox as well. And then in OmniFocus itself as a program, there's an inbox there. So the concept of getting your mind clear is to know that you have everything that is on your mind out of your mind, so you can focus on the bigger picture stuff. So to do that, you would need to process your information on a regular basis so that you can trust that your system contains those things, and that you have to review it on a regular basis so you come back to it to know that you're actively thinking about the things that you needed to remember to do. So that's where the inboxes come into play. So when let's say I got this new book in, I know it's something I wanted to read, I would place it in my physical inbox. If at the end of the day I needed to take something home with me that was a document, I would literally put it in this in folder, which it goes back and forth with me every day in my messenger bag, and I take it to the house. I have this same type of filing system right here that I have at the house, so I plop those folders in the same place here that they are at work, back at the house. So I always have that on the go, and I'm always processing those inboxes. So whether that's on my desktop, whether that's in my physical folder, whether that's in the hard inbox that's on my desk, I always try to get those clear as best I can at the end of the day so that I don't have those things lingering in my mind that I need to do. If there's a larger item that, like this book, is not really going to fit in my inbox folder if I need to take it home, I might take it home loose and then put a note in my inbox saying, hey, don't forget to read that book. So I will be processing that folder and I'll see that come across. So To give you an idea of another level of OCD, my apps are a little bit ridiculous. I don't know if you can see that, but I've kind of color coordinated all my apps, and it's super OCD. You want to know about OCD? There's some OCD for you. It's actually a bitch to manage because every time an app developer changes the color of their icon, I have to go back in there and move it around. So it is what it is. You can see kind of what's active on my phone too. Like right now, I'm trying to really get my shit together and pass that technician's exam for my ham radio license. I still have yet to do that. I don't know how I've continued to neglect finding the time to, and Siri is literally, yeah. Hold on, hold please. Sorry, I had to stop talking so Siri would not take into account everything I was saying. Anyway, so like I said, OmniFocus is the app that I have. So as this is opening, what's nice about OmniFocus 2 is that I can tap my inbox and I can just add an item to my inbox on OmniFocus as the app is opening and processing that big, large database of all my stuff. I can add an inbox item and it's really quick. So as I'm walking around throughout the day and I have something that's on my mind, I make sure to put it into this because it's my trusted system. I know that the information that I'm thinking about will eventually get looked at as I process that inbox. So that's really the key concept of getting things done. So really, I'd say my OCD comes into play with organization because I'm really big on organization. So hopefully that kind of helps answer your question and kind of gives all those of you out there that might be curious about GTD somewhere to start. Again, if you're in any kind of business or your personal life and you want to get your things in order and organized, I would highly recommend taking a listen to the Getting Things Done audiobook. Hey guys, thanks for watching Gear Tasting. Remember to use the # Gear Tasting on any social media network with your questions, and we will get them answered here on the show. If you're liking what we're doing here on Gear Tasting, please consider joining as a crew leader in our membership on ITS. You can find that link below. Please join, allow us to give you back something in return. Thanks for watching.